Now it's on? Yeah. Hey, I heard that you guys were told that I ooze Jesus. And Scott asked me, Scott's my husband sitting over here, who's here to help me. He said, "Are you oozing?" And I said, "No, because I'm wearing a pad." So I'm not oozing Jesus. I understand that was a really neat, man, I wish I oozed Jesus all the time. That is like so cool. It was a really neat compliment. And I hope we all ooze Jesus tonight in some way. I wanted to tell you about myself. Kelly asked me to kind of give me my testimony. I couldn't figure out which part of my testimony to give, but we'll see how this goes. My name's Carole Reitsma. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've been one for over 25 years in private practice. I was an intensive care nurse before that, and I've been married to Scott Reitsma for 47 years. He says it's been like 47 minutes underwater. And so I have to kind of agree with him on that one. It has been, rocky at times. I do believe this. Our marriage has died 1,000 deaths, and truly, you can ask these three women down there. They've watched most of them, but Jesus has resurrected it 1,001 times. And it is not that your marriage dies. It is that the Lord resurrects it. Because every resurrection is a new place where we grow and where we live a holier life before the Lord. That's what we're supposed to do. So anyway, I've been married to him for 47 years. We have one son who is 38. We were arguing about how old I am. I think I'm 68-ish. Close. I think I'm 68-ish. And I never thought I'd feel like this at 68, but I do. And, I love gardening. I love all kinds of things. We live in a little hobby farm that we don't really get to hobby farm that much anymore because we're getting so old, but we used to ride horses and, milk goats and all kinds of things. And my life did not start out that way. And I guess this is the part where my testimony begins. When I was a little girl, I grew up in the South, in Alabama, in a place called Huntsville, Alabama, but we really grew up in the Tri-City area. And we, on Saturday nights, this was in the 60s, most of you probably weren't even alive anyway. We grew up, I grew up in the South in the 60s. And in the 60s, race was a humongous deal. We had black bathrooms and white bathrooms. They didn't call them black. And there were riots going on in Memphis. And my dad was part of the KKK. He was a big part of the KKK. And every Saturday night, he would pour 80 proof whiskey down my little throat, put me in the trunk of the car, and drive me to a country church, a Baptist church out in the country. There, I would lay cowering, and after the meeting, he would either, by way of auction off my little body, or if he was really wanting to do something and get favor with one of these guys, he would give them my little body. That meant that I was raped as a little bitty girl in these pews. And then we would go back home. Sunday morning was church. Isn't that funny? Now, you might think, I thought, KKKers were just mean to other races. No, KKKers hate everybody. They find a way to step on people's faces to feel good about themselves. Their whole point is to feel superior. So we would go to church on Sunday mornings to look good. And I remember I would sit and watch. Back then, they passed the Lord's Supper, row to row with men. I would watch their shoes because I could see who they were from Saturday night by their shoes. And we were there to look good. I remember that I would sit on the pew, wooden pews back then were the thing. I would sit on the pew, and my mom would sit here, and my dad was on the end. And we would sit this way because she could quickly pinch the inside of my skin of my arm if I started to fall asleep. And I was tired, I was sleepy. And she would tear chunks into my arm to keep me awake. Well, she looked fine. She looked great. And this one Sunday, there was this woman, big space between us, this woman in a red and white flowery dress, big little flower, who was sitting on the end, and I looked at her, and she went like this. And before my mom knew it could tell, I took off for that lane. Scooted way down. My mom couldn't catch me in time. And this sweet, precious woman with white cotton gloves and this beautiful dress, and she smelled so good. In fact, probably if you hugged me tonight, I told you if you smelled good, didn't I? It's still there. But she had me put my head on her chest, and I listened to her sing those hymns. And it was so peaceful. It was a peace I'd never known. It was a calm in me that I'd never had before. And for the first time in my life, and for the last time in my life, for a long time, I felt safe. I felt hope. She was a light for me in a very dark world. And I tell you that because it was the beginning of me understanding there was a different life. There is a different way of being. There is a different way you can live. By the way, also, if you're ever in a store or in some place and you see a child being abused, just stop and give them a smile. Be a light. You don't have to save them, rescue them, anything. This 68-year-old woman remembers that lady all these years later. And she held me, and that hope in me kept me alive for a long time. Just smile at it. Ooze a little. You know, today, tonight, and tomorrow, my prayer is that, in this common living and living together, my prayer is that we learn some ways to relate and to have relationship better. You can imagine what my life was like. I mean, it didn't end there. The problems didn't end there. I can recall, I was auctioned off a lot my whole childhood, and by the time I was in my teen years in high school, I would stand by the coin phone, and if it rang twice and hung up, I knew my dad was coming for me to take me to this nasty naked mattress that was in a warehouse where he would sell me. He did a lot of that. And I learned a lot about relationship when I could no longer hold all this. See, Scotty, my son, was born 7 years after we'd been married. It took us a long time to have him and a lot of help. And as soon as I had him, first of all, I realized, wow, this son, I now get how God feels about his son from me feeling about my son. By the way, I just had to tell you, my parents' biggest mistake they made was taking me to church because I believed it. I believed it with all my heart. And I wasn't there to show off or to look good. And so, anyway, when I had my baby and I held him, I could imagine how God felt about Jesus. And it began a horrific panic inside of me that finally cracked at about 4 years of age for Scotty. And I'll tell you more about that later. But it changed my life. And I nearly had a psychotic breakdown, simply because I could not hold all that had happened to me anymore. And what I have learned, I went to therapy. What I have learned is I decided that anything in therapy that you can learn about has to coincide with the Bible. I'm not doing it if the Bible doesn't talk about it or say something about it. And that became my standard for getting help. And then I wrote this book called Relationship Road, because what I found out was this: you can know at any time where you are in relationship to God, yourself, and other people. Have you ever woken up and gone, man, well, how did I get here? I haven't really talked to God in a while, and I don't know even where he is, and I can't figure this out, and I have no idea how to get back to him. And, I don't get it. I'll show you how. The Bible shows us how. Relationship Road is the GPS of our soul. There's your soul, and then there's your spirit. And what our soul is our thinker, our feeler, and our chooser. In other words, what I think inside, what I feel, and what I do with those thoughts and feelings is what my soul is. Your soul is how you have relationship. It's so funny because when we get married or get engaged or whatever, we actually go to therapy to learn how to relate to our spouse. But has anybody ever taught you how to have a good relationship with God? A good one? Not the kind that says, God is good, you're bad, try harder. Not that one. But a real relationship with your Abba. We don't get taught that. It's in the Bible. We can find it there. We just never get taught about it. And that's really what I pray we're going to learn about today, or this weekend. Relationship, intimacy, don't get scared of that word. Intimacy is the cry of our heart. Intimacy gets such a bad rap. By the way, I had Intimacy Road on Facebook, and they shut me down because they thought I was doing something, weird. And I'm talking about God, So, and if you're afraid of intimacy, that's not what you're afraid of. It's just been labeled that. Intimacy is what we all are starving for, to be seen and known and heard and accepted and loved anyway. That's what we hunger for. That's what God made us for. And we don't get taught how to do that. See? I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's the cry of our heart. By the way, the whole focus of this retreat is on having a fulfilling, intimate, peaceful relationship with God, yourself, and someone you love. Fulfilling, intimate, peaceful relationship with God, yourself, and someone you love. My prayer is that we don't leave here without that. This is really interesting because what I have here is a scorecard. You're going to get used to this scorecard because, and by the way, what I hope you do with this scorecard is you eventually just walk up to somebody else and say, scores? And they say 379. Okay. Because what I hope every little group, every house church, every group of people that get together do, instead of how many quiet times they did this week, is that they have a scorecard. We start out with our score with God. This is how close are you feeling to God right now. I want you all to take this. It's easy peasy, whatever number shows up in your mind. Between 1 and 10. So and God's first, you know what your score is. if your score is a 3, that's okay if you're usually a 3. If your score is usually a 7 and all of a sudden you're a 3, this is really cool because you know it's not God's fault. He knows how to have a relationship. It's your issue. That means, okay, let's see, why did I drop from a 7 to a 3? It's because I was screaming at Scott and I know I shouldn't have been. Or, I lied about XYZ. Or, I think God's mad at me because I've ignored him for the last 2 days. Or, I didn't do enough quiet time, so... Okay. You know why your score is low. Okay? But if you're normally a 3, because you just are, so then that's okay. It's not as much the number as whether or not it's going up or down. And by the way, you can also try this out. You can go, wow, it's a 4 right now. I think I want to get to a 7. I'm going to go turn on worship music and talk to him. Watch what happens to your score. So the first thing is your score with God. We will continue this about your scores in a little bit, or throughout the week. Now, what happens with this score? Well, because we were created for intimacy, we have something called a relationship road. And this is another thing I'm going to help you learn how to use in your life. This is the GPS for your soul. And it really does work. Okay? And by the way, on this chart, whenever anything is in color, that's what we're focusing on. I don't know how to do this any better, but that's what we're doing. Okay? So, by the way, what happens is you were created for intimacy. Jesus said it this way: there are 2 laws that everything else hangs on. Everything else, you only got to know 2. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. Now, what does that mean? Well, your heart is a male noun in the Hebrew world. It's cardio, and it means intellect. Now you know why it's a male noun, because it's intellect, it's facts, okay? All that boring stuff for women. Your soul is your nephesh. Ooh, this is a good part. It's your reproductive organs. It's where you have intuition. You just know something. That's a female noun called your nephesh. Your mind is your reasoning between your nephesh and your cardio. That's what Crystal was talking about. See, she had ignored all her nephesh. So when she started thinking about it, she just was cardio, intellect and reasoning, and it was really messing with her life. Okay? And then there's strength. Strength is really interesting because it's an adverb. And I'm not that much into grammar, but I did learn this about an adverb. Strength is called strength here because it means to bake like a cake. To bake like a cake. You take lemon and sugar and flour and eggs and, oil, and you put it all together and you bake it. And you can't take the lemon back out, can you? It's baked. That's the strength of the Holy Spirit, by the way. It bakes all of that within you, of your heart and your soul and your mind. And that's by the power of the Holy Spirit. So that's the first law. And then the second one is love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? This one Christians get really messed up with. There's something called joy. Has anybody ever had that joy? Jesus, others, you. Anybody ever heard that before? That you're supposed to have Jesus first, then everybody else, then whatever's left over, you get. That's also called doormat. Doormat. God did not call you to be a doormat. By the way, you cannot love somebody more than you love yourself. I say that to couples in counseling all the time. They're like, yeah, you can't. See, you have to love yourself. Now, by the way, people go, well, what about arrogance? Arrogance is still poor self-esteem. Arrogance is a doormat who fakes it and acts like they're so hot. But they're doing it out of a place of protection so they don't get stepped on. Loving a neighbor as yourself is this. Man, you know what? I love me. I love me, and I have to be real and honest in loving you. Because if I don't, I drop in my amount of loving me. If I treat you ugly, guess who I feel bad about? Okay? If I treat you good, guess who I feel good about? You can't love somebody else more than you love yourself. So those are the two laws. Those are the two places that put us in this place called abundance. Abundance is a word I want you to get used to hearing. Abundance is the place God created Adam and Eve to live in the garden. Abundance is like Thanksgiving meal after you've eaten all you can eat, and your favorite thing in the whole world, pecan pie, you can't even fit in there. You're so full. You are full to overflowing. You are abundantly full. That's how God created you to live. You know, the other thing that's really interesting is God created us to live in peace. And by the way, he created us to live in that intimacy place where you're naked and not afraid. You're naked and not ashamed. And in this place, you have peace. This is a really interesting kind of peace. This is a shalom peace. Shalom in the Hebrew is like a pie cut into slices, and there's nothing missing and nothing broken. That kind of peace. But I like to say it this way. Jesus said, I came to give you peace, not as the world knows peace, not the world's kind of peace. This is the peace that says, let me put it this way. You ever gone to a scary movie at the movie theater? Scott hates to go to movies with me because I jump and jerk and freak out. I have good reason. But, I get scared and jump and freak out. I forget I'm in the movie theater. Right? If you remember you're in the movie theater, then when the guy's coming with a hatchet or whatever, it's like no big deal because it's a movie. You're above the chaos. When you have Jesus' kind of peace, whatever is going on in your life, you understand is in the moment. And you see above that instead of getting freaked out about it. We're going to learn more about that also tomorrow. Then there is this word epithumio. That's another word I want you to remember. Epithumio means desire. As in Jesus said, I have desired to eat this meal with you. I have epithumioed to eat this meal with you. Last meal before he was crucified. He desired. He had a hunger and longing to have relationship with these people one last time. That's what epithumio means when it's used in abundance. Okay? Hang on to that for a minute. I'll show you something else. Now, when you're in abundance, you have intimacy. You have this place where God is filling you to overflow with his love, with your needs being met. And you have peace and desire for relationship with him. You want to epithumio God. Who wouldn't? Of course you would. Okay? In deprivation, instead of intimacy, there's intensity. Instead of being in love with God, there's an idol or more, one or more. instead of loving this place of relationship, it's addiction. So, intensity, idolatry, addiction. Words that we get used to saying, but I want to unpack a little bit. When you're in deprivation, the word desire means lust, or I like to call it greedy grabbing. Have you ever had somebody you felt was like greedy grabbing? No? Only me? A place where they're lusting after something you have, or you've lusted after something somebody else has, and it's a greedy grabbing kind of epithumio. Right? You can use these words in abundance and these words in deprivation. I want you to ask yourself how many words are which for you. This is how you figure out where you are. In intimacy, there's peace, you're authentic, you're vulnerable, you're in faith, you have unconditional love and acceptance, you have understanding, you're convicted when you do something wrong, you're at rest, you're accepted, you're full to overflowing, and your relationship with God is rewarding. It's fun. It feels good. You know, have you ever sat there, okay, like you may be sitting here right now and going, man, I wish I oozed. Such a weird word. I wish I had that kind of relationship with God. You know, guys, it's not hard, I promise. It's not like, you got to be some kind of super Christian to have a fun relationship with God or to feel your scores stay up there. And it's not about getting up at 6 a.m. to do your quiet time and check them off the list. And it's not hard. It's vulnerable. And intensity, instead of peace, you have discord and drama. Think about your home right now. Instead of authenticity, you have fake and false and deceptive. Instead of vulnerable, you have aloof and disconnected. Instead of faith, you have fear. Faith is the opposite of fear. Or, by the way, it's faith in Satan. Fear tolerated is faith contaminated. I'm just having more faith in Satan than I am in God, which creates fear in me, by the way. Instead of unconditional love and acceptance, you have conditional approval. Instead of understanding, you have confusion. Instead of convicted, you're condemned. Instead of being at rest, you're anxious and hiding. Instead of feeling accepted, you're blaming and avoiding. Instead of feeling full to overflowing, you're in denial and perfectionism. Instead of a relationship that's rewarding, it's never enough. And we're biting and devouring each other. I would say that Christians are just as much in deprivation as the whole rest of the world is. I mean, when you think about that, the divorce rate right now is 57%, and if you're divorced, I am telling you right now, I have no kind of judgment at all. My heart hurts. It's back to the thing where it says that God hates divorce. That drives me crazy because God doesn't hate divorce. God hates how people are treating each other or how you've been treated that ends up that the only choice you have left is divorce. It's not the D word in the certificate. It's what's been going on in that home. And you can see in deprivation why we have as big a divorce rate as anybody else does, right? The other thing about abundance or deprivation is this. God told Adam and Eve, well, he actually told Adam, you can eat from every single tree, every tree in this garden but one. Just one. You got everything else. You got mangoes, bananas, apples. I mean, you know what? You got them all. One fruit. Tree of knowledge of good and evil. Don't eat it. You can touch it. You can't eat it. You know, and you think about when Adam and Eve sinned, what fruit was that good that we ended up all in the place we're in now? You know what? Like, you know, a mango, and I love mangoes, but really. Anyway, the interesting thing about God's yes and no is this. When God says no, in abundance, it feels like protection. It feels good. It feels safe. It's okay that he's telling me no. When you're in deprivation and you hear no, it's punitive and punishing, and you're just keeping me from something. We're in deprivation. Well, you had all these trees you could have, but one. The other thing that's really cool about abundance is this. It's the L principle, and we'll learn more about this later. But God gives to Adam all this love. He walks in the cool of the day with him. He lives in the most amazing garden ever. He's got all of this. He's just full to overflowing. I'm really jealous of him at the moment. And, you know, I mean, I used to be in deprivation, huh? And God says, it's not good that Adam's alone. It's not good for him to be alone. Why? Because we all need somebody to share with. You know, when I got up here on this stage, we're looking at these roses. I love roses. These are real guys, by the way, and they smell incredible. Stick your nose in them before you go tonight. They are gorgeous, and they're real. And you know what? I sat down and said to Kelly, did you see these roses? I want to share them. I want somebody else to see this too. Sunset? Come look at the sunset, you guys. Or hey, did you hear what this new Bible word means? Or whatever it is. What you enjoy and love, you love to share. What if you couldn't share it? See, God says it's not good for you to be alone. Because out of the abundance of love that God had given Adam, Adam also needed to give. So what God did was he put Adam and asked Adam to name all the animals. He paraded every animal through here and had Adam name them all. What a job. And so Adam's naming all these animals. Now, why is God doing that? Because God is teaching Adam that he has a need. Because when this was done, Adam said, there's no one here for me. He was teaching him his need. Remember, in abundance, God fulfills all your needs. So what God did was he put Adam to sleep. And after he put Adam to sleep, he made his baby girl. Her name was Woman. It was not Eve, by the way. I just want you to know that. It was not Eve. That was not her name. God put Adam in a deep sleep and took his baby girl and loved and cared for her. She was Adam 2.0. And she was there for Adam. And God loved and cared for, this baby girl, this just precious woman, till he woke Adam up, and Adam said, wow! Now I have somebody face to face. Not below me, not in some way less than, face to face. Now, I want to tell you this, and we're going to talk a lot about this weekend, but see, we don't understand our value and how God values us. Because before the fall, we were woman. We were made to meet a need and to enjoy this same El Principle love. And God fulfilled the longing of our souls to be seen and known and heard and accepted and loved by each other. You know, by the way, intimacy, being seen, known, heard, and loved is the way you learn trust. Mama has a baby about this far away. Mama is seeing this baby, and baby is seeing mama. Baby cries. What does mama do? She meets his need. She hears him. She accepts him. And that builds trust for that baby. And if you don't have trust to begin with, oh my goodness, we got to go back a whole lot of time in therapy to get you to trust. You know, I just have to say, there's a lot of women in this church. I love this church. I've asked God if we could move here. He said no a couple times. But you know what? The whole thing is this. There are a lot of women in this church who I have met because somebody said, you're hurting. I know somebody who can help you. That meant it was safe enough for the hurting person to tell somebody else they're hurting. Oftentimes when they're walking, you guys walk everywhere around here. I was serious when I said I don't have an exercise. I can't exercise. I have a really bad back. So to be kind to my body means I don't exercise. At least that's what I say. And so, but here's what happens. This is why you have women who are going to give their testimonies to you. Do not leave this place by tomorrow without whispering to somebody, I need help. I need something. I'm hurting. Don't do it. It's a lie from the enemy. And you've got women here who are saying, you guys, this church is like amazing. I love this church. The women here want to be safe. They want to live in abundance. They want to take you with them in abundance. That's 3/4 of the battle in this world. So, anyway, God created woman and man. By the way, I'll just mention this. When Eve got her name from Adam after the fall, when they were totally ugly, ticked off, nasty to each other, really blame, denial, hiding, ticked off. You know, you ate the mango first. And Adam said he named her Eve, which means the mother of all living. That was not a compliment. That was, she's good for babies. Put down. We've been fighting that all along, haven't we? Fighting just being valued. God never meant it to be that way. So, Adam and Eve and God had this relationship going. They were filled by God with love, and then they had love to give to each other. And then Satan entered the scene. You know, I want to read Genesis 3 because this is really important that you understand and learn how the father of lies wants to lie to you. So we're going to look at how he lied to Eve. And this is Genesis 3, 1-6. I read out of the Amplified. I love the Amplified Bible. I had to go to the Amplified. If you've ever been trashed by a Bible, you know, something person who spiritually abused you with, you know, the Bible. I don't know, is anybody, I'm not seeing very many shirts, you know. Yeah, okay. Then you need to change your version because it's like it just convicts you all in the wrong places because it's just a mess. Change versions. I went to the Amplified. It's like many words, but it works. And I love the Amplified. So try it if you want. I love it. Chapter 3. Now the serpent was more subtle and crafty than any living creature of the field which the Lord God had made. And he, Satan, said to the woman, can it really be that God has said, you shall not eat from every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit from the trees of the garden, except the fruit from the tree which is in the middle of the garden. God has said, you shall not eat of it, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. But the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die. For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing the difference between good and evil, and blessing and calamity. And when the woman saw that the tree was good, suitable and pleasant for food, and that it was delightful to look at, and a tree to be desired in order to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate. And she gave some also to her husband, and he ate. Now I want you to notice something. I think Eve was alone at the moment when this came up with the serpent, with Satan. Or if Adam was there, he wasn't saying anything. The reason why I think that is because Eve was deceived. Adam chose Eve instead of God. Adam was not deceived. You know, there's another reason. Eve gets a bad rap like she was, Miss Sinner. Adam picked her over God, right? And Scott has said so many times, Adam should have, taken a shovel to that serpent. Ready to... So I want you to notice who Satan is. Satan is subtle, crafty, the father of lies. That means every single lie there is in this world ever, he produced. He's a father of lies. He's sneaky, deceitful. He comes to kill, steal, and destroy. He's crafty. That crafty means he can't create. He can only make something of something else. I have a craft room. I cannot create fabric or ribbon or anything else, but I can make something of it. Right? Crafty. By the way, Satan can't make you sin. He can't do it. The devil does not make you do it. He can only trick you into sinning by lying to you. Satan tricks us by using a piece of truth and a boatload of lie. If he didn't use a piece of truth, you wouldn't believe it. So here's how this works. If I were to say, oh man, your hair is purple. Did you just get it cut or done? Because it's sitting here turning purple. She wouldn't buy that because she knows her hair is not purple. She could see it. It's not purple. Okay? If I said, you know what? I heard that the purple comes in a couple of days after you've used that kind of coloring. Now, I just lied to her, and now she could buy it, right? Another way to put this is like this. If I tell you that I have a snowblower, $3,000, in my garage, brand new, in the box, never touched, and I will sell it for $500 to you. All of which is true. There's just one problem. Anybody know what it is? Yeah, California, you don't need a snowblower. Which was my problem when I bought it to begin with. I bought it thinking I need a snowblower. I have one that happened a couple of Christmases ago that's really good. I got to show you this. I love bubble baths. And Scott and Scotty know that, and it's like a really easy way to, get me something. Because there's bubble bath stuff everywhere, right? So they bought me this humongous basket full of almond and something else bubble bath. Soaps and shampoos and lotions and the whole, I'm going to smell like an almond factory when I'm out of there. And I was thrilled with this basket. And on the front of it, it said, includes luxurious Egyptian cotton towel. Ooh. It sounded so good. So I'm tearing it open looking for this towel. This is the towel. It's a towel for Barbie. It even says luxurious Egyptian cotton on it. That's how the enemy lies to us. And that's why it's so important to learn how to find his lies. Listen to how he tricked Eve. First he says, can it really be? He questions, has God said every tree? Well, God said one tree. He didn't say every tree, but he puts Eve on the defensive by insinuating that God's really, really punitive. No, in deprivation. And that, you can't touch any tree. You can't eat from any tree. What are you guys eating? Dirt? And he was exaggerating about how God is stingy and impossible to obey. Ever heard that before? Have you ever thought about that about God? You ever thought, God, I can't do all this. Come on, God. I can't. Satan's lying to you. You're not supposed to do it all. Jesus did. Anyway, so he also questions with a lie. He puts Eve on the defensive. I want you to remember this. This is worth writing down, every single person in here. A thought is just a thought until you believe it. Just because a thought goes through there does not mean you have to own it, think about it. You can just let it go right on by. You don't have to believe it or even say it's yours. It doesn't even mean it's your thought. You just let it go right on by. In one ear and out the other. Thought is just a thought until you believe it. So, Satan's exaggerating. It throws Eve into arguing with him. It puts Eve on the defensive. And this funny thing is, she says, we can't even touch it. Now, this is really funny because I have a husband who is kind of like that. Carole, get 10 feet away from the tree. Do not even touch it. And I, of course, then go, right? I don't like being told that. But I can see where maybe Adam told her, don't even touch it. Maybe she wasn't lying. I've always thought maybe she was lying, but after rethinking it, maybe she believed she's not supposed to even touch it, right? So what happens with Eve is that she then sees that she's alone, her first mistake, or she needed to run to go get somebody. And by the way, she doesn't have to talk to Satan. And then she over-exaggerates. See, when she did this, she questions what God said. She questions his intentions. You ever done that? I have. She questions the truth, or maybe it's just your interpretation. She exaggerates the truth. She denies what God says will happen. She's put on the defensive. You don't ever have to defend God. That's like a little boy with a plastic sword with a fire-breathing dragon. You don't need to defend God, ever. It creates fear and anger and defensiveness and lust and confusion. You can see it's all in deprivation. And she saw that the food was good. It was good for food. That's lust of the eyes. It's delightful to look at. That's lust of the flesh. And it would make her wise. That's pride of life. Satan hooked her, lie after lie after lie after lie. And he hisses, "You shall not surely die." Eve looked at the fruit from a place of deprivation. It's the one thing she couldn't have. So she bites. And then she gives Adam some, and he bites. You know, have you ever thought about what would have happened if Adam hadn't bitten? What would have happened? What if he grabbed Eve up and said, I got to take you to Dad. This is not okay. And he had said, Father God, she ate this, and I know she's not supposed to, but I love her. I love her. And he had said, God had said, you know what, son? Somebody has to pay the price for this. And Adam would have said, I will. I'll pay the price. That's what the new Adam did. That's what Jesus did. You know, the saddest thing about this is really what happened in this place of being thrown into deprivation. Genesis 3:7-20 reads this way. Then the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves apron-like girdles. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife had hidden themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to Adam and said, Where are you? He said, I heard the sound of you walking in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, and I hid myself. And God said, Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten of the tree of which I commanded you that you should not eat? And the man said, The woman who you gave me to be with, she gave me the fruit from the tree, and I ate it. And the Lord God said to the woman, What is this that you have done? And the woman said, The serpent beguiled and cheated and outwitted and deceived me, and I ate. And the Lord God said to the serpent, Because you have done this, you are cursed above all domestic animals, and above every wild living thing in the field. Upon your belly you shall go. You shall eat dust and what it contains all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will bruise and tread your head underfoot, and you will lie in wait and bruise his heel. To the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your grief and your suffering in pregnancy and the pangs of childbearing. With spasms of distress you will bring forth children. Yet your desire and craving will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And to Adam he said, Because you have listened and given heed to the voice of your wife, and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, saying, You shall not eat of it. The ground is under a curse because of you. In sorrow and toil shall you eat of the fruits of it all the days of your life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. In the sweat of your face shall you eat bread until you return to the ground. For out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. The man called his wife Eve, because she was the mother of all living. Adam and Eve, in this relational void, were naked and ashamed. You know, that's where embarrassment came from. You know, nobody has to teach you to be naked and ashamed. Nobody has to teach you that. If he's sitting in the bathroom and somebody opened the door, it's that easy. It's natural, right? They were naked and ashamed. They also had this thing where they started hiding from truth, hiding from God. They started blaming God and each other and Satan. They started denying and avoiding to manage their sin. Hiding, avoiding, denying, blaming. What's your favorite? Which one are you best at? Denial. Anybody else? What are you best at? Avoiding. Nobody's going to pick blaming. I know there's got to be somebody in here because I hear a lot of blaming in therapy. Yeah. We all have a favorite flavor to manage our sin. And so the thing that's really hard about this is this. Toxic shame pours into our soul, and it's very painful. This is what shame is. Shame is soul murder. It murders your soul. Toxic shame is this. If you do something wrong, it's not that I did bad, it's that I am bad. I am bad. My dad used to make me bite the victims of people he was messing with, because then it was my teeth if I told. I was massively abused to teach me not to tell. When I nearly had my nervous breakdown, my psychotic break, I was so fearful of being found out I was a monster. I believed I was a monster. That was toxic shame that had kept me silent for all these years. It was the stripping and the nakedness of my soul, of this is me, this bad. Toxic shame is a kind of pain that is horrific. It's a pain that drives us to numbing out. See, shame, by the way, is a stupid thing anyway. You're not supposed to shame. You're supposed to feel guilt when you sin. If you haven't sinned, that's not appropriate guilt. That's thinking you're in control of everything and you feel bad because it didn't work. Shame isn't supposed to even, your value, who you are, is not up for debate. You can't be bad. You can act bad. You cannot be bad. You can act like a monster. You cannot be a monster. That toxic shame that strips us of who we are, of any kind of safe place in our thinker, feeler, chooser, in our soul, is so painful that what we do is we numb out. We run to a place of numbing and deprivation. I call them fillers. You can understand addictions. We're talking addictions. We need something to numb out on. You can think of the woman in the, mainlining heroin in the alley. That's an addiction. Or the guy who, is drunk all the time, that's an addiction. But you know what? I can mainline chocolate. I can spend 4 hours, 6 hours. They have to kick me out of Joann's Fabrics. Oh, man. That's why I have a craft room. It numbs me from feeling the pain. See, Christians have these poly addictions. No one's a heroin addict. Nobody's doing, we're not gambling the house or whatever. Maybe some of us are. Who knows? But we do all these little things. One of the best addicts in the Bible was Martha, of Mary and Martha. She was so worried about a pot roast for Jesus, she needed her sister's help. She's not listening to Jesus. She instead, where she could have gotten resolution for her pain, instead she's trying to be the hostess with the mostess. Again, what's your favorite addiction? What's your favorite? We all have them. Whatever it is, Netflix. Oh, good new series on it, and it's got like 10 episodes from 6 seasons. That's awesome. I can numb out on that real easily, right? It's instead of dealing with the broken relationship and what I've done, I run headlong into an addiction to feel numb. By the way, the crack about this is this. God says he'll have no other gods before him. So you're going to have to do more and more and more of your addiction to stay numb. See, because our addiction becomes our idol. That's where intensity comes in. I got to keep it up and keep it going more and more and more and more and more. You know, pain, therein, the loss of intimacy, of not getting to walk and talk with God in the garden. Now they're trashing each other. They've trashed God. And God says something really, really profound. It's the saddest verse in the Bible. God says, "Behold, the tree of life, lest they should eat." See, and the answer in the finishing of that sentence was, "and live forever in this awful state." He couldn't finish the sentence. You ever thought about what that was like for God? Can you imagine if your child was taken from you, now living in a horrific state, horrific place, and you are prevented from getting to that child? The only thing you can do is take them out of the garden, keep them away from that tree so they don't live in that intolerable, horrific place forever. Lest they should eat and live forever. The injury to our emotional self, to our soul, was tremendous. It was devastating. Living in a fallen world because of toxic shame, where my essence is bad, where remember all those words and deprivation that we live in, some maybe when you go home tonight. It's horrific. And God doesn't want you to stay there. You know, God asks us these same two questions. And I have the worship team come up. God asks us these same two questions. Where are you? Where are you? Right now, in your life, right this moment, sitting in this chair, where are you? Where are you? What's your score? Where are you? And who told you? Where'd you get the lie? It's a lie. What throws you into deprivation and out of abundance and out of relationship is a stinking lie. He says, where are you? Where are you? While we sit here tonight, and you know what? Most of us know the answer to that. I know there's been so many times in my life where I've heard, where are you? There's a great word, a great definition for the name Israel. I never had heard it before. One of the names, the name Israel has the definition is this: I surrender to win. I surrender to win. You have the opportunity tonight to surrender to win. You may be afraid of intimacy. You may be afraid of getting into a relationship. You don't even know how that works or what goes on with that. And you were abused also maybe, or you don't. You just haven't done well with relationship. God doesn't care. He takes you back. He'll teach you. Please don't let tonight end without answering those two questions. I want to invite you to have the time just for a moment to come down here and get prayed for. Just surrender to win. Don't let tonight go by in your denial, blaming, hiding, whatever. Come try something new. Come back tomorrow and try something new.